So hello, good afternoon. My name is Amanda Gangwish. I am the program director here at Conservation Nebraska, along with Kendra Noller, who's up there muted, but ever present, battling a little bit of a sore throat. And so I will be doing the talking for her today, but we are excited to have you all here. A little background before I hand it off to the star of the show, the person you're actually here to learn from. Conservation Nebraska is a nonprofit that focuses on environmental education and outreach. So throughout the year, we're hosting great and cool events just like this one for the public to allow them to learn a little bit more about conservation issues in their area. You guys, if you came in to this event and it's your first time attending, you'll notice that you're muted and that your videos are turned off. We do this just as a security precaution, keep everything smooth running. So you have no control in changing that. And that does mean if you have any questions or things that you'd like to ask Erinn or myself here at Conservation Nebraska, feel free to drop those in the chat or the Q&A function at any time. We'll answer those all at the end, unless it's more pressing and immediate, then we'll make sure to get to it right away. This is also being recorded and will get posted online probably at the beginning of next year with all of the holiday stuff coming up. So if you have someone you know who should be interested in this topic, feel free to share that out, and that will be available on Conservation Nebraska's website and YouTube page. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Erinn, who's with the Upper Big Blue NRD. She's going to fill you in a little bit on what she does and some really cool things happening in the NRD systems for nitrate awareness. So without further ado, Erinn, take it away.
Yeah, so I'm Erinn Wilkins. I'm a water tech here at the NRD. My main focus is on water quality programming. So anything and everything relating to water sampling, kind of what I do. So kind of makes sense to talk about nitrate awareness within the district. So without further ado, we will get into an overview of what we're going to talk about today. So we'll start with nitrate contamination, how they're affecting Nebraskans, phases of levels of contamination, and then what producers can do to help, as well as new NRD incentive programs. So to kind of start it off, we're just going to talk about what exactly is nitrate contamination. You know, some people kind of think they have an idea of what it is. Sometimes they don't. So let's just start with the basics. So what exactly is nitrate? It's an inorganic compound made up of nitrogen and oxygen, most commonly known as NO3. If you can see that on, your fertilizers or anything like that. It is essential. Nitrogen is essential for all living things, but high levels of nitrate in drinking water can be dangerous. So how does nitrate get into the groundwater? It's a variety of different sources. As you can see in the image here, those are your main ones, your ag sources from nature, the atmosphere, animal manure, your fertilizers, sewage or septic waste. It can also be a result from overuse of chemical fertilizers, improper disposal of animal and human waste, as well as improper well construction and well location. Other sources of nitrates that can enter your well include fertilizers, your septic systems, feedlots, industrial waste, and food processing waste. Wells can be vulnerable to more contamination after flooding events, or if the wells are too shallow, have been dug or bored, or have been submerged by floodwater for a long time. I know that the flooding that we had here in Nebraska in 2019, a lot of health departments were pushing for water testing, water sampling of wells that were affected by the flooding, just to make sure that there wasn't more contamination or water pollution that was happening within those wells. So how are nitrates affecting Nebraskans? So 80% of Nebraska's public drinking water comes from groundwater sources, and we are the 4th largest user of groundwater in the country, behind California, Texas, and Arkansas. So the NRDs, we help by monitoring the groundwater by doing a lot of water sampling, as is evident with this map here, showing you the most recent nitrate concentrations found within the state. So EPA has set the safe drinking standard at 10 parts per million, or milligrams per liter, as this map is shown. So anything in the orange and red are above that safe level, and anything in the green and yellow are below that safe level. So it's not necessarily one area is better than the other. There are red dots all over the state, particularly along the Platte River line, and then up in the northern part of the state. But it is something that the NRDs are looking to combat to help lower those nitrate levels. So one of the things we do, as I said before, was sampling. Back in the early 70s through about mid 90s, sampling wasn't as huge of an issue. As you can see, the number of samples weren't as steady, and that your median nitrate level was fluctuating quite a bit, kind of lost spikes and jumps. Whereas in the mid 90s and on, we were being more consistent with our sampling. Your median level is a little bit more steady. The trend line overall does look pretty scary because it is a huge upward increase. But if we look at the last 20 years, yes, sampling is more consistent. Your median level is a little bit more consistent, not as many spikes. That trend line, even though it is still increasing, is a little bit more stable, a little bit more steady. So again, more monitoring kind of helps us with keeping things on track as far as nitrate contamination goes. So one of the things that I get asked a lot since I do the water sampling here at the NRD is the health effects. What should we be concerned about? So the biggest one that most people know about is blue baby syndrome. If infants below 6 months who drink water containing nitrates above 10 parts per million, they can become seriously ill. And if they aren't treated for it, they could potentially die. Other people who should be concerned about this, if you have pregnant women and nursing mothers, elderly people, or those who have elevated health conditions, they should avoid drinking water high in nitrates. They have been linked to certain cancers, or many studies out there with that. Right now, we are actually collaborating with the Med Center out in Omaha about a study on how nitrates can be linked to pediatric cancer within the area. Nebraska is one of the top states in cases for pediatric cancer, so it is a very close to home study for quite a few of us. We are also analyzing the samples for uranium and atrazine in addition to nitrates, just to kind of see what's going on in the groundwater. But again, it's just an important reminder that if you do rely on a private well to get it tested yearly. One of the things that we do to help with that is we sample about 250 domestic wells each fall. So here's our result map from this last sampling season. We finished it up about mid-November of this year. Again, EPA sets the safe level at 10 parts per million. So anything that's in the orange, yellow, and red dots are above that safe level. Anything that's in the little blue dots and the green are safe. So the highest well we tested was at 72.3 parts per million. So that's about 7 times higher than what is recommended as a safe drinking level. So it's important to know what's in your water, as well as what else is going on down there. So this map's broken up into zones. I'll touch base on that in a second. But this is just showing you what percentage of wells were above that 10 parts per million from this last sampling that we did with the fall domestics. So again, it's kind of scattered throughout the district, around York here, where we do have higher nitrates. 61% wells above 10 parts per million isn't as uncommon, but we would like to get that number below, whereas you have zone 10 up in Butler County, they're at 31%. So the phase levels and contamination, before I get started on this, I will say that these are for our district only. Other NRDs do have their own phase levels, I guess you can say. Some have more than 3 phases, some have different nitrate levels that determine the phases. So these are what we have for our district. So we have 1, 2, and 3. So phase 1 is everybody within the district. Phase 2 is when the median nitrate level is at 7 parts per million or greater for the zone. And then phase 3 is when the median nitrate level is at 10 parts per million or greater for that zone. So here is our zone map. These don't follow the county lines, they follow township lines, and these were created to help make the district more manageable. So what you have going on in terms of water quality and soil type in Adams County is going to be way different than what's going on in Butler County. So just to kind of make things a little bit more easier to manage and so forth. So then every summer we do sample about 200 plus wells. This last year we got about 202 samples out of 210 sites. Zones that are colored, so the orangey and the red, we do sample those every year. The zones that are in white are on a 3-year rotation because they are at a lower nitrate level, they're not as much of a concern as the higher nitrate zones. So most of the wells we do sample are irrigation wells. And as you can see on the left-hand side, the highest one we found was at 70.5 parts per million. So again, 7 times higher than what EPA recommends as safe. We have a handful of domestic wells. The highest one we found was at 99.2 parts per million. So that's almost 10 times above what EPA recommends as being safe. So again, just a important reminder to test your water, test it at least once a year. And so we also have some monitoring wells that we sample, and those are included on this graph. Those we sample twice a year, mainly for nitrates. Sometimes we will include other contaminants with there. And then we also have 2 municipal wells that we sample with this program. So what we do with all this data is we go ahead and take the median nitrate level, and that's what we get for each zone. So the levels here are in parts per million. So the zones in the white are phase 1. So those are below 7 parts per million. Those ones we consider in a way the safe zones. They're not as huge of an issue right now because they are low in nitrates, especially zone 12, which is at 0.4 parts per million. Phase 2, which is on the western side, the kind of orangey color, they're between 7 to 10 parts per million. And then the red are the phase 3, 6 and zone 11. Both of those zones previously were in a phase 2 area, but then they both reached 10 after the summer sampling session. So then they bumped up to phase 3. So they will have more rules and regulations that they will have to follow just to try to get that nitrate level back down. So one of the things that we also do is we look at trends within the median levels. So here I have 3 of the phase 1 zones, and then not everyone is familiar with our district, so I did include which parts of the counties down below that they are with. So zone 4, it's been on the cusp for the last few years, so their trend line's a little bit increasing, but you look at zone 7, which is a little bit more steady, it varies from zone to zone. And then the other phase 1 zones, and these ones are actually all on the eastern side of our district. And then you have phase 2, which these ones are between 7 to 10 parts per million for the median level. Again, some are kind of, increasing higher than others. Others are kind of stabilizing. And then phase 3, these are the ones that are above 10 parts per million for their median levels. Kind of around York County, York and Hamilton. So what can producers do to help? So one of the things that we do at the NRD is that we do have some rules and regulations in place. One of them is limiting when anhydrous ammonia and nitrogen fertilizer can be applied. So the ammonia can't be applied before November 1st, and the fertilizer may not be applied before March 1st. And then we do require soil sampling if they are doing a corn on corn rotation. If they are rotating between beans and corn, it's not a requirement, but they're still welcome to do that sampling if they want to. So they have to get a 0 to 8 sample for organic matter and residual nitrogen, and then an 8 to 24-inch sample for the residual nitrogen. And then they can use that soil analysis to help them with their nitrogen needs calculations. So if they're in the higher nitrate areas, so the phase 2 and 3 areas, they do need to calculate out how much nitrogen is needed per field before they apply any for the year, just to help them with not over applying the nitrogen. For the phase 3 areas, if a producer has an active irrigation well, they do need to sample it once every 3 years for nitrates. We do offer free testing at our office, or they can use a lab of their choice. They just have to give us the results just so we know that they met that requirement. Zone 5, which was the only phase 3 zone for a while, has about 1,100 wells in the area. And then with zone 6 and 11 coming in, they have about 2,000 wells between the 2 zones. So overall, we're getting about 3,100 wells of our 12,000 current active wells in the district. So that's about a fourth of the district that we're getting samples from. So again, just another thing that we can do to help maintain these nitrate levels and help lower them. And then also the use of nitrate inhibitors. So again, this is for a phase 3 area only. If they want to apply nitrogen between November 1st and February 29th, they do need to use an inhibitor. And our board did recently approve some more ingredients for inhibitors just to kind of make it more friendly for everyone involved. So other things that producers can do, got another list for you. So avoid over fertilizing. So if you follow the recommended guidelines to use the proper amount of fertilizer, and then to look at the rate and timing of the application that's on the container. Avoid overwatering. The amount of nitrate lost to leaching is related to the volume of water that moves past the root zone. Schedule your irrigation events so that the amount of water applied meets the plant's needs. Use cover crops. By planting cover crops, they can help use up the excess nitrates in the soil before they leach to the groundwater. Cover crops also improve soil health, prevent soil erosion, and conserve soil moisture. Decommission old wells. Decommissioning old and abandoned wells help eliminate a direct path for nitrates and other contaminants to get into the groundwater. And again, that kind of goes back to earlier when I was talking about how with nitrate contamination, it can be a result of well construction. So ties in with that. And then maintain your septic systems. Make sure to have them inspected regularly and pumped periodically to avoid leaks into the soil and the groundwater. And then, of course, you can also contact your local NRD to learn more about what you can do, since each NRD is different. So what are the new NRD incentive programs? So we actually have 2 new programs. One of them deals with cover crops, and then the other one deals with buffer strips. So we will look at the cover crop one first. So the Upper Big Blue NRD, we started this new cover crop incentive program. So we're looking for landowners or operators within the Recharge Lake watershed shown here, or qualifying municipal wellhead protection areas, which I'll show you on the next slide, if they are willing to plant cover crop seed on their row crop acres. So to kind of give you an idea of where we are, you have Bradshaw on the western side of the map, and then you have York on the eastern side. So kind of that area in between York and Bradshaw is where this Recharge Lake watershed lies. And then here we have for our district, all of the approved wellhead protection areas. So anything that's in the yellowish color, if you farm within that ground, you do qualify for this program. So cover crops are proven to reduce erosion from wind and water, increase soil organic matter content, capture and recycle or redistribute nutrients in the soil profile, promote biological and nitrogen fixation and reduce energy use, increase biodiversity, suppress weeds, manage soil moisture, minimize and reduce soil compaction, improve yields by enhancing soil health, reduce use of herbicides and pesticides, and create grazing opportunities. So just from this list alone, cover crops are doing way more than what most people would think that they do. So the Upper Big Blue NRD will administer the cover crop cost share program in conjunction with the NRCS to plant up to 2,000 acres of cover crops annually within the Recharge Lake watershed and the qualifying municipal wellhead protection areas. Approved applications are eligible for 5 years of funding for this program. And then interested landowners or operators should contact if they want to start their application, should call their NRCS office, or you can call John Bush at our office at the phone number listed here. He is also the main person doing this program. So if you do have more questions, he's your go-to person for this. So a total of $100,000 is available beginning in the fall of 2021. And then for approved applications, the maximum cost share rate can be up to $50 per acre for the cost of seed and seeding, or 100% of the actual cost, whichever is less, up to $7,500 per landowner per year. So the applications are approved for a 5-year term. NRCS or other federal, state, or local funds may not be combined with this program. And then all seed selection and seeding must abide by the NRCS code 340 cover crop criteria and scenarios. And cover crop termination is not eligible for funding under this program. So again, to kind of show you, tracts that are located in the very high and the high risk categories are eligible for the maximum payment of $50 an acre for the first year, and that decreases to $30 per acre over the 5-year period. So here is the areas that are in the orange and the purple. And then again, tracts located within the municipal wellhead protection area where they do have that plan. So basically the tracts are in the yellow area, $50 per acre for the first year, and then that does decrease to $30 per acre over the 5-year period. So landowners and operators are eligible for this program. If approval is given to an operator, we will notify the landowner by mail that the practice was approved for planting. Applicants must commit to participate in the program for the entire 5 years. I know that there is some leeway. So if you're doing a rotation on your field instead of corn on corn, we are willing to work with you on that. And then land located within the very high risk or the high risk area within the watershed or within the qualifying wellhead protection area. So approval will be notified in writing. Once approved, you will have to call our NRD for the authorization number. Upon authorization, the applicant will have 90 days to complete the practice. And then after completion, final invoices must be turned in to the NRCS. They will review the practices, and invoices and whatnot will be forwarded to the NRD for final payment. And then any purchases of seed or services made prior to the authorization are not eligible for funding. And again, cover crop termination is not eligible for funding under this program. So just looking at the cost share rate over the 5 years, starting out at $50 per acre for the first year, and then it does go down to $30 per acre by the 5th year. The cost share rate is 100% of the actual cost of seed and seeding up to the maximum scheduled rate over the 5 years of the program. So the landowner or the operator will be reimbursed for 100% of the actual seed, at the program annual rate. The maximum cost share is $7,500 per landowner or operator per year. NRCS and other state funds may not be combined. And then the seed selection must abide by the NRCS code. Again, termination costs are not covered. And then seeding may be completed by drilling, aerial, or broadcast application. And then if the landowner or the operator discontinues the program prior to completing all 5 years, they will have to reimburse the NRD 50% of all previous payments made to them throughout the program. And then participation in this cover crop cost share program will not affect their ability to participate in our land treatment program. And then we do reserve the right to reallocate program acres or funds between the recharge lake watershed and the wellhead protection areas in order to best utilize available funding. Okay, so we'll go ahead and talk about the second incentive program, which is the Nebraska Buffer Strip program. So this program offers financial assistance for landowners that install filter strips or riparian forest buffer strips. And then these strips are placed next to seasonal or permanent streams, wetlands, and ponds. These practices provide protection between cropland and water bodies by helping to stabilize the environment and filter agrochemicals such as fertilizers and pesticides. So contracts run from 5 to 10 years. State program payments can vary from $20 to $250 per acre, depending on your soil type, whether the acres are irrigated or not, and whether payments are received from other programs. In addition, there are incidental heating and grazing allowances through the program. And then the Upper Big Blue, we recently completed a water quality management plan, and we selected Recharge Lake Watershed and the Beaver Creek Watershed as the initial target areas for implementing water quality measures. So here is just kind of showing you where those watersheds are. Again, the Recharge Lake Watershed, which was part of the cover crop program, we have it here in red. And then the Beaver Creek Watershed does span across quite an area, and that's shown there in green. So for applications, you just have to apply through the NRCS under this program. Only landowners are eligible for this program, so operators cannot apply for this, just landowners. And then lands located within the Recharge Lake watershed or the Beaver Creek watershed are eligible for this program. And then the landowner must meet all additional requirements and be approved under this program. And then only new or renewed buffer strip projects are eligible for this incentive program. So in addition to the buffer strip program payment, the landowner will receive an NRD incentive payment set at 50% of the buffer strip program payment for the life of the contract, which is 5 to 10 years. And then if the buffer strip is removed before the expiration of the contract, the landowner must return all previous payments to the NRD. So if you want to look for more information about this program, if you do a Google search of Nebraska buffer strip program, it will be the first link that's listed there. And then you can just go through there. They do have more information listed on their website than what I have given you today. And then if you also scroll down on the website, they do have more links that you can click on to learn more about the program. So that is all I have for you today. I guess now we can open it up for questions if people have any.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Erinn. We have gotten some questions that have dropped in while you were giving all this wonderful information. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop those in the chat or the Q&A function. We'll make sure they get answered. So we're going to start with one that was actually submitted online through a registration. So this person notes that they run a pool supply store, and that once nitrates are in the pool or spot, it needs to be drained or diluted to lower that nitrate. And they've heard that this can be remedied with a 1 pound per gallon of potassium peroxymonosulfate, which is a chlorine-free shock. Any truth, knowledge, information about that? Seek help elsewhere.
I mean, that's kind of the first I've heard about it. Again, I kind of deal with more groundwater. So like with pools, it's kind of its own area in a way. I would contact Culligan. They're kind of more known for that area of dealing with pools and other water treatment systems. So.
Okay, well, yes. So Chris, sorry we couldn't answer the question, but hopefully some direction on where to go now with that. Crystal asked if when you're working with private well owners, do you ask if they use a filter?
Sometimes, because since we do our own sampling here at the office, landowners can bring in their own water samples. And so we will ask, if they are using a treatment system. And we've had cases where they do have reverse osmosis. So they'll test that and they'll also test the well, and they do come back at roughly the same concentration. So then it brings in the conversation of, when was the last time you changed your filter, and other topics like that. So, it is something that we do keep an eye out on.
Okay. Someone asked, are there consequences if the farmers apply more fertilizer than needed in the phase 3 areas?
Not really. I mean, what we do is kind of more of a recommendation. So if they want to over apply, then what's recommended, that's kind of on them. It will eventually lead to an increase in nitrates within the groundwater. So it's kind of, instead of thinking about a here and now approach, it's what kind of a future do we want to leave for future generations? So.
Okay. And then what % of land is in the phase 2 and 3 areas are using conservation practices?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't have that number right in front of me, but I do know it is quite a bit of the land that they are doing conservation practices. Again, I don't have that number in front of me, so I can't give you an exact, but I know it's more than half. So.
Okay. What kind of inhibitors are for nitrates?
There's different kinds out there. Before NSERV was the only one that was approved for our district. And then, as I said, our board did approve 3 additional ingredients. So basically, if the inhibitor has an ingredient, then it's good to go in our district. So, and that can be found on our website and our rules and regulations if you want to learn what those 3 are. So
perfect. That was going to be my follow-up question. So you read my mind.
Yeah.
someone's wondering if the sampling of the nitrates is done at different depths ever, or do you consistently hit normally the same depths?
It depends on the well itself. So we do have monitoring wells throughout the district that, again, are just meant for sampling for nitrates and other contaminants, and they are drilled at different depths. With our summer sampling program, we are testing wells from different depths. We have wells that are shallow, wells that are deep, wells that go through different confining layers, unconfined layers, just trying to get a good variety of what is going on in the groundwater in our district. So.
Okay, perfect. Mike has asked, do you have any ideas on how many residential wells are not actually registered? And then where does your water quality nitrate trends compare to the other NRDs?
Okay, with the residential wells, so if their pumping capacity is below 50 gallons per minute, they are not required to register with the state of Nebraska. So most of those wells are pumping around 20 gallons per minute. So again, not a lot of them are registered. I know a lot of the wells that we do sample for the fall domestics are not registered. I think of the 250, I think maybe about 20 or 30 of them are registered. So right there, you're missing out on good information, such as your well depth, when was the well drilled and all that. So we do encourage homeowners and landowners to register those wells. I know that things have changed over the years. So, if it's above 50 gallons per minute, they are required to register it. But if it's below it, then they aren't. But we do encourage them to register those wells. And then as for the other NRDs, so we actually do quite a bit of sampling compared to the other NRDs. So you have the ones out in the panhandle, they're not as concerned about groundwater quality because they just don't have the same capacity that we do in terms of irrigation. So it's kind of a toss up here, 'cause again, some do, some don't. So, you can check out their websites and see what they have in terms of their nitrates. So.
Okay, we have a question that's asking what other type of chemicals are leaching into our groundwater?
It's a good question. We are starting to look at arsenic, selenium, and uranium with our monitoring wells. And I know that in the past we have done that with other irrigation wells. And so that does have the potential to come into the rotation with nitrates, analyzing for those contaminants, chemicals. It just kind of depends on what the farmer is applying to the field. Everyone's different. Everyone has different practices. So it varies from farmer to farmer, field to field. So.
Okay, fair enough. Well, we've hit a stopping point with questions. So I'm going to actually launch a question of my own on everyone's screen. So if you don't mind taking that for us, that helps us here at Conservation Nebraska with our event planning, where we want to go with things in the future, grant funding, all of that fun stuff. So if you don't mind filling out the 3-question survey that just popped on your screen, we'd greatly appreciate it. As well as we'll give you a little bit of time while this is happening to think about any last minute questions you might have for Erinn. Otherwise, I also want to just take this time to thank Erinn for joining us this afternoon, filling us in on a lot of good quality information about the new programs. I got a sneak peek on a little bit of them before this event, so it's cool to still hear more detail and information about some of those new programs that the NRD is partnering with and putting out there. So we'll keep it open for a second longer, see if any last minute questions come in. If they don't, I would also like to thank everyone who attended for joining in. Again, this was recorded. We'll make it available online probably at the beginning of the new year. So if you have anyone you think would be interested in this topic, feel free to share it out once that goes live. If you have any questions that come to mind later, I know Erinn put up some contact information there. I'm sure she'd be happy to answer any questions, or you can feel free to reach out to us here at Conservation Nebraska. We won't be the experts to answer, but we're always happy to direct people to who we know are the experts to get your questions answered. So feel free to reach out to us as well with any questions. All right, we did have one pop in. So what is the financial burden of having nitrates in drinking water?
So one thing that I always talk about is health costs. You know, as I said before with health effects, that is a question I do get asked a lot by homeowners when they get their water test and it comes back high in nitrates, what health issues should they be concerned about? So I do, you know, it's the health cost of trying to combat that. And then also just water treatment systems. If you do have higher nitrates, it's going to take more to get them out. So again, monitoring a well each year, just seeing what those concentrations are can definitely help with keeping costs low in the long run.
All right. Well, if there are any last minute questions, speak now, forever hold your peace. Otherwise, I will probably just end us a little bit early. I know everyone's always happy to get back a few minutes in their day leading up to the holidays. So there are no other questions. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you again, Erinn, for all the quality information. Kendra, the one who actually hosted this, you didn't really get to see her, but I won't take credit for an event I didn't plan. So thank you, Kendra, for pulling this all together. And thank you everyone for joining us. I hope you have a great rest of your day, evening, and a Merry Christmas and a happy holiday New Year.